Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
And we're live. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday, everybody.
Carr.
And I'm Kristen Johnson.
And we are live and present, coming to you from New England, United States.
Live, present, and accounted for.
Absolutely. And I hope you guys had a great week. We have an amazing show for you guys. And we are so psyched. We're not even gonna tell jokes today. I think we're just gonna go right into the bio, get right to the good stuff, because this is going to be an amazing show. Our guest this week is Michael Feeley, and Michael Feeley is a former UK police officer, now ancient code breaker and spiritual life coach, who has authored 7 paperback books, with others currently in writing, and several ebooks on various esoteric subjects, and is a public international conference speaker. In fact, Michael has been hosting a conference this weekend, which we're going to talk about, which is the Global Pyramid Conference. Michael has recently filmed and also presented a documentary series called Higher Consciousness on Iconic TV, which is David Icke's channel, and he's also appeared in an iconic film called Divine Intervention, also featuring David and Eric Von Donigan. So we're going to bring him right on. Welcome, Michael.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure is all ours. Thank you for coming in. I know you're having a busy weekend. You're at the Global Pyramid Conference. Or streaming to them, which is cool.
That's
correct. Yeah, I think it's the third one, and maybe tell us a little bit about that, and we'll get into your story.
Yeah, well, the organizer, Marta, we spoke several months ago, and following that conversation, she asked me if I'd like to sort of do a presentation at her particular sort of a conference, which is the Global Pyramid Conference. And of course, yes, I always love, I love doing this. I love passing this information on. They've all passed today, and I really enjoy passing on the knowledge that I've learned. So it was an absolute yes from me, due to obviously the current world climate and travel restrictions and different things. I would have liked to have been there. The organizer wanted me to be there physically, but unfortunately, because of travel restrictions, I'm having to do it by live stream. But nevertheless, I put together a presentation specifically for this, and it doesn't just go into the pyramids. It doesn't just go into Egypt. It goes into all the other civilizations of the world. It goes into religion. It goes into Mars, planet Mars, and different planets. So it goes from Earth, all around Earth, and to beyond Earth. So hopefully it will be a nice 90 minutes for the listeners.
Absolutely.
Now, your story is really interesting. I think you spent a good portion of your career as a UK police officer, and now I guess we would call you an ancient code breaker. How did that come about?
Well, it came about. I joined the police force, which at the time I joined was a 30-year career. So you'd obviously do your 30 years and then you would retire. And it was always my intention to do that. It had taken me a long time to actually get into this career. And once I was in there, I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. I was well thought of, was well decorated, received many awards for the job that I did. And 17 years in, kind of my world collapsed. And all of a sudden, there was lots and lots of what you would deem to be, should we say, UFO and paranormal events that were just absolutely bombarding my life literally every day. And this happened in the space of weeks. And a day didn't go by when something would be witnessed or experienced by me, and sometimes friends who were around me at the time, which was fortunate or unfortunate for them, depending upon your point of view. So my life was turned upside down, and it kind of had all the hallmarks of being a timed awakening, so to speak. So I was there, year 17 of a career, 30-year career, 13 years short of retirement. All of a sudden I was thrust into the world of whatever world it was, really. It was a paranormal world, intergalactic world, multidimensional world, supernatural world, but nevertheless, that was now my new world, and that took me away from my first marriage, which was the police force, really. And from that point on, I was purely an experiencer, and then that developed into understanding what I was experiencing and then having answers for what I had experienced. It was visitations from the past. I also spent time remote viewing 159 years in my past, so I sort of time travelled backwards, and I've experienced things coming forward into my time events to speak to me. I've seen UFOs coming out of dimensional portals in the sky. I've seen dimensional portals opening up in the middle of dense forestry. I've telepathically been invited to certain locations, just like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That has happened to me. So it's really gone from experiencing to understanding what had been experienced, to getting lots and lots of downloads and lots of sacred information from the ancient world, and a lot of the information that they wished to pass on to the present sort of time.
Was some of this information you were receiving, you were still a police officer at the time, was it kind of work related? Did it have anything to do with the cases you were working on?
No, it was nothing to do with the cases that I was working on officially. There being shall we say, a ghost girl that had been around my wife and my wife's family since her sort of, shall we say, toddler years up into her teens and so on. And when my wife and I got together, then I inherited this ghost girl story. So I suppose technically we were kind of engaged in that, because she told us that she'd been taken by the hands of another, and she asked us to look into this event, which we were doing at the time. So one morning, which was on the 9th of February 2009, my time, I actually went back 159 years into the past to the scene of the crime where she was murdered. And it was her stepfather who had murdered her. And little did I know at the time that it was a stepfather that was creating poltergeist activity in my house, smashing windows from the inside and doing different things in order to prevent my wife and I from actually looking and investigating into this matter, which we eventually did. So,
Interesting.
So it was really, really a traumatic time, shall we say, to actually go back and witness. I can actually vividly remember now the bedroom. You know, it was Victorian England is when this happened in the year 1850. And the 9th of February 2009 was the 159th anniversary of the incident. So everything came to a head on that particular morning. And we'd sort of got the assistance of a psychic medium who we knew. And she basically said, I will come over and help you the next day. And just as we were about to go and collect her, she called us saying, sorry, I can't help you anymore. And I basically said, yes, you will. And I went and drove, and actually I drove 30 minutes to go and pick her up from her house. And when we got there, she was on her doorstep. And she said that she'd been a medium for many, many years, but this is the first time that she'd ever been kicked out of her own house. She explained to us that on the morning that she was coming to help, which was like this particular day, she said that her washing machine, which wasn't even switched on, had actually lifted in the air from the floor. She said that she put a cup of coffee in the kitchen. She'd gone to retrieve the cup of coffee and it had been moved to her living room. And she said it's the first time that she'd ever been uncomfortable. And in essence, she came over and this girl's story was read to us verbatim through the medium. And it was at that point that we realised that we'd also got the assailant with us as well. And he was quite a nasty piece of work, really. And the medium was ill for 6 months after helping us. And it was probably about the same amount of time that it took me to actually be confident enough to switch the light off in the bedroom at night, because every evening at bedtime, it felt like I was going to relive the incident again, and then again, and then again. And it took a long, long time to get the confidence to realise that actually it was just going to be just a one-off event that I was going to witness and see. And I vividly remember being in her bedroom, and I vividly remember the door creaking open and ruffling the curtains, and I vividly remember hearing the girl say, "He's here." And he was a 14-year-old Victorian teenager, 159 years in my past. So that was and she's here now, actually, because I can actually feel her presence. But it's real. It was a real traumatic incident for me. But that really was the point that collapsed my world temporarily until I was able to rebuild it with some nice experiences of the paranormal and supernatural sort of world. But that was really the one pinnacle moment that changed my life. And of course, when you have an introduction into the kind of world that I was now being introduced to, there's no way you can unknow what you know. There's no way you can go back to what most people would deem to be normal, because your life is no longer normal. You
right?
change.
Yeah. So that was kind of the deciding factor for you to change, because you had been a police officer for a long time. And I find that so fascinating, because it seems like the paranormal community doesn't embrace things like ufology and remote viewing, which is like parapsychology, which we personally are involved in. We love remote viewing and telepathy and the kind of science behind that, or becoming a science. But we're all talking about the same kind of thing. It's phenomena. When you experience things, it's like, well, okay, everything I've learned until now it is not true, and it's kind of like growing up with the planets, and Pluto was a planet, and then it wasn't,
and it was
and
a
it was,
rock, and then it was
dinosaurs changed. I mean, we have to have an open mind, because we are constantly evolving, right?
You do, and what you have to realise is that humanity clings on to a history that never occurred. It clings on to miracles that were never performed. And it can be a harsh reality to realise that everything that we held as true, everything that we believed to be true, is not true.
Everything you were taught
was a lie. Yeah.
It is, and it's been completely and utterly misrepresented. The most famous character the world has ever allegedly seen, Jesus Christ, is not real. Mm-hmm. It is a metaphor. It is a metaphor for our lower nature that dies to allow for the higher mind to exist. And when the higher mind comes in, then it removes sin, because sin really just means a lack of knowledge. So really the whole Christ story is talking about the human condition from now to what it could be. When we look at all Bible stories, it's the same thing. When we look at the ancient past and the pyramids and the monoliths and what we're told that they represent, they represent nothing of the kind. So we have to, when we look at the UFO community that believes the paranormal is different to it, to the paranormal society that believes the UFO phenomena is not connected, well, they are mistaken, because it is connected. And when I first looked into the whole of the ancient world, and I looked at the Egyptians, and I looked at the Sumerians, and I looked at the Babylonians, and I looked at the Greeks, and all of these different things, I originally believed that they were separate entities, but they're not. They were all a single piece of a gigantic jigsaw, and that goes beyond the Earth, not just on planet Earth, but nevertheless, they were all saying the same thing, but by different symbology, in a different way, in a different expression, but they were all saying the same thing. So we have the theme, which connects the whole of the ancient world and beyond, and we have mathematics of the ancient world that connects them to the likes of the Sidonian city on Mars. So we have all of these facets that connected everything together into one thing, and that one thing is ourself. Because if you wish to understand the universe and all that is in the universe, if you wish to understand nature, if you wish to understand the oceans, you must first understand yourself, because we are all of those things. And the answer to the mystery is within the mystery itself. We are the mystery. Mm-hmm. Now, the whole of creation is the number 10. So the miniature universe is the number 5, which then gives you the pentagram, which is the symbol of the mysteries. It is the Star of Bethlehem. It is the symbol that everyone will put on their Christmas tree in a few months' time. It is the pentagram. It is microcosmic man, miniature man, because within the pentagram, you have the 4 elements and the 5th element, which is the ether, the ascent. So in order to become divine man, you must control the 4 elements within. Now, the word God is code for the 4 elements. God is not a deity, it is not an entity, it is a code. And it stands for the 4 elements, as does the tetragrammation of Yahweh and Jehovah. When you look at the Sumerian story in Enki and Enlil, and the Egyptian story of Ra, then it is really a magic formula that came from ancient Egypt that was taken by the Kabbalah. It's a magic formula to evoke certain deities from the different kingdoms. And they were creating a sacred space, a compatible environment for these deities to come into this world. Now, those sacred shapes, the geometric shapes, in order to do that, were triangles and circles. So when you look at all the monoliths and monuments around the world, they are either triangular, which is the pyramids, or they are circular, like Stonehenge. They were creating magical spaces, compatible environments to invoke deities from other worlds. So all of these gods that we've been worshipping for thousands of years are magic. They are not deities, they are magic formulas that when you say it in the correct sequence, in the correct letters, you evoke certain deities. And this happens even in the modern day with secret rituals underground where they are creating astral deities in which to interact with. So the whole of the world that we think, the paranormal is not different to the supernatural, which is not different to ufology, which is not different to Egypt, is not different to the world of religion. They are all saying the same thing.
The occult, for that matter, right?
Well, the occult is basically, it just means hidden, just means secret. And the reason that many of the occultists wear black, like the priesthoods and judges, is because black absorbs light. Now, light is seen as the truth, is seen as knowledge because it is the seen, we can see it. So light comes in, gets absorbed by the colour black, but it doesn't get put back out there. So, in other words, the truth is hidden, the truth is kept in, it's not given back into the seen world. And that is why they all wear black, etc., because it's also hiding them. It is hiding them from the cosmos, from the ether, from the karmic fingerprint. So again, it's all magic rituals, and different colours evoke different deities, and that's why, you have white gowns, you have purple gowns, you have black gown robes, because they're evoking different deities with different sequences and colours and sounds.
That's so interesting. I've always viewed the pentagram as the micro and the macro, sort of a representation of that, of man and God. And you mentioned that as a sacred symbol, and surely when you draw it, right, it's made up of triangles or pyramid-like diagrams, right?
It is, and when you see Christ doing his famous hand symbol, that is the upright pentagram. Now, when you see the likes of Winston Churchill doing his, that is the downright pentagram. So the Christ symbol is the upright pentagram, which again is the 4 elements which is contained within the pentagram, which is miniature man, which is, if the whole of the cosmos, if the whole of creation is the number 10, and man is the miniature of the universe, then man can become complete within the pentagram, within the number 5. And that is why it is the sacred symbol of the mysteries, or he was originally. And that takes you into Baphomet, that takes you into all different things. What I found in the whole of the philosophy of the ancient world is they are talking about the human body and the human condition and the human potential, but they're all expressing it in different ways. When we see the likes of the Temple of Hercules, or the Pillars of Hercules, or Bowers and Jachim in Masonry, it is the anterior things of the brain. Now, you go no further unless you are enlightened, because the temple, the 2 pillars that you see with Hercules, within Masonry, are the anterior pillars of the brain. Now, you go no further unless you are enlightened, and because that is the doorway to the hippocampus, which is the Holy of Holies. Now, the hippocampus means seahorse, and that is why you see the likes of Poseidon riding on seahorses. It's talking about the enlightenment of the mind, which is within Golgotha, the place of skulls, because that is where we get the light to become enlightened. So that is why we have the heads of Easter Island, where you can only see the heads, because they're talking about a divine mind and not a body of five senses, the 5 wounds of Christ, the 5 senses that we are imprisoned within this realm. And when most of humanity believe that there's just an earth, there's nothing else, and they only have one sort of focus, which is one sphere of existence, which is the earth plane. Now, for those who have access to the higher facts, and they realise that the spheres beyond the horizon that we can't see, then they are the Elohim, because Elohim, El is God, which is, as I say, the 4 elements which is within you, and Olam means beyond the horizon. So those who go on a journey of discovery beyond the horizon into the unseen are the true biblical Elohim, because they are in possession of the higher facts, and they realise that there's more to reality than most people could ever grasp.
Than what the 5 senses show us. And it was so interesting. You mentioned the hippocampus, and I think that's the part of the brain that kind of puts everything together, like memory and logic and left and right brain. It's kind of a hub, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm no brain surgeon by any stretch, but I believe so. And that's fascinating. It's that kind of like the as above, so below. There's so much about a bit like the Sephiroths, right? And Tree of Life and Kabbalah.
Well, the whole, again, when you look at the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, the Sephiroth, which is the 10 emanations, again, it's talking about the creation of the universe, where man is actually within that Tree of Life, but man is the miniature of the universe, which is the number 5. So again, yes, the Kabbalah talk about that, but when we look at, the likes of biblical stories and the Adam and Eve story and the tree in Eden, well, Eden basically means to judge with the eye. Now, when we judge with the eye, we get it wrong, because we see, we don't know what's inside.
Right.
So Eden,
perceptions, the way we see. We
do. And when we start speaking out of turn, and when we start cursing people, when we start using our voice to destroy someone, the tongue has no bones, but it can destroy someone by what you say, how you comment. Now, within your body, within your throat chakra, which is what you use for speech, is your Adam's apple. So when we misuse these things, it is the fall of man. It is when we fell. So when you look at the word Adam, it is really Aleth Dam, which is the blood of the ox. Now the ox, which is Taurus, it is the neck in zodiacal man. The neck is the bridge between the body, the lower aspects, and the mind, which is the higher aspects of man. So the ox, the Taurus, is a bridge between the two. Now, the blood of the ox, blood relates to Lamed, which is number 30. Number 30 means to teach or to be taught. So you have to teach to become of a higher mind. You have to be an initiate to understand the higher mind and make that exodus from captivity, which is the lower chakra, to the promised land, the holy land, the land promised, which is the enlightenment of the mind. Now, when you start looking at the burning bush of the Moses story, that is the fornix, which is the furnace inside the brain, which is through the 2 pillars, which takes you into the hippocampus. So we are talking about the enlightenment of the mind. And the parting of the Red Sea is the path of least resistance, the open sea that the Gnostics call the transition between the lower chakras to the higher chakras. So everything in these biblical stories are talking about a spiritual maturity, a spiritual transition that is happening inside the body, that is happening inside the mind. The Great Pyramid of Egypt represents the mind. The Ark of the Covenant is the sarcophagus inside the king's chamber. When you start looking at the diameters of the sarcophagus, biblically and in the king's chamber, they are an exact match. So the sarcophagus of the king's chamber is the Ark of the Covenant, but the king's chamber, when I've put a map overlay of the human head over the Great Pyramid, the pineal gland is where the king's chamber is situated. The queen's chamber is situated where the pituitary gland is situated. So they are mimicking and replicating the mind, the human mind, human consciousness.
So I just wanted to touch base on this a little bit. the king's chamber, and there's a sarcophagus, like you said, in there. And a lot of people believe that if you lay down in the sarcophagus inside the king's chamber, that your body will heal. Have you ever heard that?
Create a miraculous healing, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why that's attributed.
It's basically healing through vibration.
That's
now,
what
when you look inside these monuments and monoliths, they are harmonic keys. They're stargates, but they're also harmonic keys. Mm-hmm. And for argument's sake, inside the Great Pyramid, each stone is a different note, is a different octave. Now, when I was coming up with a mathematical formula for the speed of reality, there was this long mathematical number that appeared. A couple of weeks later, when I was looking into the harmonics within the Great Pyramid, the exact same number appeared. So my mathematical formula for the speed of reality matched the harmonics within the Great Pyramid.
Oh, wow. So fascinating.
It is, and I've actually been into the centre of Stonehenge, where people have used tonal rules, which is voice harmonics, and they have made the whole of the circle of Stonehenge reverberate and sing back to us. Now, in 1971, 5 men were witnessed to disappear and never be seen again from the centre of Stonehenge. When you hit the right harmonics within these ancient monuments, the crystalline stones, you disappear. You go through a stargate. Now, when you look at,
I've heard that. That's
when you look at what are the 64 keys of Enoch, well, that is the 64 harmonic grids that the Giza Plateau rests upon. And when you hit the 64th note in the right frequency, etc., the hemidemis hemiquaver, you open the stargate of the Giza Plateau. And the Giza Plateau is the original Bible. So everything can be tied into one singular thing, which is self.
And I've heard this as well. We've heard this as there's a stargate in Machu Picchu, going back to doing the octaves, the higher octaves, and I've heard that in a few of the ancient structures.
That they will trigger something, and that's what you're getting to with the
and open a portal
of Enoch. Now, when you say it opens a portal, what do you think happened to like those gentlemen in Stonehenge in 1971?
Where did they go?
Where did they go?
When you look at the ancient monoliths, there is a thing called the planisphere, which is where these monuments and monoliths are aligned to certain planets. So Stonehenge is aligned to Saturn, the planet Saturn. Now, ironically, the majority of crop circles that we see on the face of Earth are around Stonehenge, which is aligned to Saturn. Now, when you listen to the sounds that are transmitted from the rings of Saturn, and you listen to the sounds that are coming from the harmonics of crop circles, they are an exact match. So a lot of the crop circles are information. When we see beautiful shapes, when you see snowflakes, when you see crop circles and the like, that is really a frozen image of the sound of the environment. So when these things are coming from Saturn, if you imagine the rings of Saturn as a guitar string, and someone is sending information which within 90 minutes can get from Saturn to Earth, Stonehenge is a crystalline aerial receiver that is taking this information and it is creating patterns on the landscape, which is the sound that's being transmitted from Saturn. And within these sound waves, there are sentences, there are letters, there is a language, there's a higher spiritual communication going on.
Absolutely.
Which is the same with hieroglyphs, which is the same with Nazca lines, which is the same with crop circles. There is a higher spiritual symbolic. Symbology is the language of the masters. And looking in the chat, and someone's mentioned about Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is the Great Pyramid. Noah's Ark is not about it, it's the Great Pyramid of Giza. And all of these things are really, really harmonic keys, but they're also transmutations of consciousness by sound and by advanced, shall we say, acoustics. And these are really the masters of sound that were able to do that. If you ask me who built the Great Pyramid, which is the epicenter of the ancient world, it was the mathematical creator of the universe that created the Great Pyramid, and he created it through sound.
Wow. So that would take us back to people think like the giants did it or built it because the blocks are too heavy or whatever. Same thing with Baalbek. So you believe it's frequency and it's from the universe.
From the creator of the universe, who's a mathematical supreme mind, where basically everything follows a mathematical
Right.
Everything from humans to the smallest atom to the largest galaxies, they all follow a mathematical code which requires very, very little intervention. And we then have, of course, the astral light, which reflects things in reverse. So whereas we have the higher mind of the cosmos, then the reflection reversal is the low mind of Earth, etc., etc. But the universal creator has put the Great Pyramid there with mathematical supremacy, and they are harmonical places which put us back in alignment with where we should be, because as a humanity, we are many thousands of years behind where we should be, and we need to advance and we need to become spiritually mature. So all of these different things are really a way for us to be kick-started back to the higher places where we should be.
Yeah, all these things seem very consciousness related.
Yeah.
And like, it's almost like when you talk about an awakening, like we're almost talking about a great awakening. Like if we could figure out these codes and all these things, understand our place as not just part of the universe, but maybe the universe itself. Something that's
and that's exactly what it's trying to get us to do. Because if you imagine that, I keep going back to the Great Pyramid, because for me that really is the epicenter of all on planet Earth, and is connected to Sidonian City on Mars by mathematics, etc. But when you look at the Great Pyramid, it's almost a time capsule of knowledge, and there's so much knowledge and mathematical knowledge and consciousness and enlightenment knowledge within the Great Pyramid that it was set upon the waters of time to re-emerge at a time in their far-off future. Now, when you look at, which I've done, is look at the Egyptian star codes, which was taken by the Hebrew mystics, and it was encoded within their Hebrew calendar. Mm-hmm. These star codes were hidden in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I've found where they've been hidden in Scotland. And what they tell you is that the Hebrew calendar works in 360-year cycles. Now, this information was timed to re-emerge on the 17th 360-year cycle. Guess when that is? Now. So, based on these star codes, based on the Hebrew calendar taken from Egyptian star codes, taking the mathematics and the height and everything of the Great Pyramid, I've been able to date the Great Pyramid at 73,440 years of age.
Oh,
wow.
That was one of my questions I was going to ask you was how old do you think it is, that and the Sphinx?
They are around about the same, because the Sphinx represents the tribe of Judah, which is the breath of the lion, which is the Pramayana breathing, which activates the third eye. Now, the Giza Plateau has 9 pyramids because it represents the 9 months of gestation of a child. So when you have the soul coming through the Orion Nebula, through the Silver Gate, which is just above the Hunter's Hand, it comes through into this world, and it comes in from the celestial to the terrestrial. Now, the only way in which you can do that in our current physical form is through the Holy Grail, which is the womb. Now, the Sphinx represents the Holy Grail, represents the womb, represents the tribe of Judah from where Christ emerges.
So you think that the Holy Grail is actually not materialistic? You think it's consciousness?
The Holy Grail is the womb. It is the womb. And when you look at the original Holy Communion, it was the drinking of menstrual blood, which is the Holy Communion. So they used to drink, the mystics used to drink menstrual blood and semen, which was the elixir of life. And so that is Holy Communion. But the Holy Grail itself, in the physical realm, is the womb, is the uterus, the vessel of God that we must pass through to come from the celestial to the terrestrial. When you look at the Holy Grail of the sky, because as above, so below, it is the Orion constellation that is the Holy Grail of the sky, which is what we come through anyway, in which to come into this realm. So these things are not necessarily physical things, although, the Holy Grail is physical because it's in each and every female that ever exists. And we have to come through this process. And we have 9 pyramids, 9 months of pregnancy. We have 3 trimesters of 3 months. We have 9 pyramids in groups of 3 groups of 3. So it all represents this. And the Sphinx itself, the face of the Sphinx, when you get a overlay of the face of the Sphinx and you put it over the face on Mars, it's an exact mathematical match. And when you look at certain mathematics again of that kind of thing, it's telling you that the Sphinx face represents Isis, who is the goddess of motherhood, or Hathor, which is really the house of Horus. And when you see the hole at the top of the Sphinx's head, it is where I believe that it once contained the cow horns, which again represent the womb.
Wow. Yeah, all the seeds of life in there, and the foundations of our life, our existence, our perceptions, our consciousness, and the fitting in. You referenced the Emerald Tablet again, right, with the as above, so below kind of thing, right? The Hermes Trismegistus. I always say that wrong. But I think he's really onto something, and these codes seem to line up with that. It's like everything that we can perceive seems to be tied together symbolically in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I mean, symbology really is a way in which to hide information, except for those who have been taught to read the symbols. So it really, symbology is the language of the masters, and it is a spiritual representation. When anybody reads an ancient book, including the Bible, including any religious book, if you read it literally, you will never find the truth, because that is not where the truth is.
You have
the
to
truth
think outside the box.
Metaphorically.
Right. It is metaphorical, and if you look at the metaphors, if you look at the symbols, if you look at the mythology of these books, that is where the truth is hidden. So, as I mentioned previously, you can walk around and you can search the mountain of Arafat and believe that you found Noah's Ark, but Noah's Ark is not a boat. You can search around and think that you found, or you're searching for the Ark of the Covenant. Well, many people have stood next to the Ark of the Covenant. It is the sarcophagus, of the King's Chamber. You can walk around and look for King Arthur. You can look for the sword Excalibur, but it is a story of consciousness. Why was King Arthur the only person who was able to extract the sword from the stone? Because the stone is the pineal gland. It is where David hit Goliath with one smooth stone between the eyes, which is talking about the pineal gland. It's talking about human enlightenment. So, ex caus libertarius means liberated from the stone. What it is telling you in the King Arthur story and many others is that the chosen can have access to the knowledge. And even the Bible says, to them, you are given the truth, but to everyone else, they're given parables. Yes, they're given stories that are hiding truth. And if you read it in a literal way, you will never understand the mystical meanings of these books or these ancient writings, because that is not how they were meant to be interpreted, and that's why you can never interpret them correctly. If you look at the 5 books of Moses, which makes up the Jewish Torah, which is Genesis to Deuteronomy, well, if I was to hand anybody a Bible now, I pretty much guarantee that they would pick it up and read it like a book from Genesis to Deuteronomy, from left to right. But the Hebrews read from right to left, because it is taking them towards their heart, towards their spiritual center, not from left to right, taking them away from their spiritual center. So you read the Bible or the Torah or the 5 books of Moses from right to left, from Deuteronomy to Genesis. Then you get it the right way around. Then you get a correct and more correct interpretation. If you read it like a book and you read it literally, you will never ever pierce the outer veil to peek inside the truth.
Oh, it's an interesting take with Revelations, right? And
yes.
Yeah, I remember we had a guest on who was mentioning that the plagues were in the reversed order.
Yeah.
Or the destruction.
The 4 horsemen.
4 horsemen are in the reverse order.
Of the apocalypse were actually
in the Bible.
reversed, yeah.
We found intriguing. It seemed to be true.
We do. Well, we have it backwards. And as I say, when you look at Revelation means to reveal, and apocalypse pretty much means the same thing. When we look at all of these different terminologies, we need to understand the original meanings of them. When people turn around and say you must fear the Lord, you must fear God. Well, fear in ancient Hebrew means to know, to understand. So we must understand the Lord, we must understand God, we must understand what God is, which is the four elements within us. If we can control the four elements within us, we can become divine on earth, because we are controlling, the creation within us, which is part of the creation of the universe, which is the part of creation in ourselves. If I'm forever angry, then my fire element is out of balance. If I'm forever crying and sad, then my water is out of balance. If I don't control my thoughts, then my air element is out of balance. If I don't look after my body, then my earth element is out of balance. So unless you control these four elements within us, which is contained within the pentagram, then you are not going to master this reality. And if you do, then you become the God-man or the God-woman, which then connects to the Godhead, which is the higher level of awareness.
Yeah, to become the master of this reality. I like that. Besides being a record by Black Sabbath, master of reality, that is amazing, because that is kind of like our goal, right? It's kind of to hit the spiritual point where all things are aligned and all within balance. No matter what we do in life, it seems like that's where we're trying to end up, gradually trying to just become better people in a way. It seems almost natural to want that. Also, we had a comment out here. This is pretty interesting. Chantel Raymond says Orion is...
Yeah, we have a light.
is nearby the constellation Draco. Dragon or serpent. Coincidentally, serpents are meant to be the guardians of portals, so Orion lining up with ancient monuments as gateways and other realms makes sense to me.
Correct. And also, dragons are representative of masters of the four elements. That is why King Arthur was known as Arthur Pendragon. Pendragon means dragon master. So the dragon is also the four elements that I've just been speaking about. The dragon breathes fire. It flies through the air. It has scales, and its claws attach it to the ground. So you have the four elements within the symbol of the dragon, which is when there's a local cathedral close to me where you see an effigy of a priest and you see a dragon below its feet. That is telling you symbolically that he has mastered the four elements within. And so, you have all of these different symbolic meanings when you look at, again, the Sumerian scrolls and you see massive giants, and there were giants in those days. There's giants in these days. I'm not disputing that, but there's also giant is a symbol for a higher than average insight, a higher than average knowledge. Now, when you look at David and Goliath, and I've already said, hit him with one smooth stone between the eyes, which is the pineal gland. But the biblical Goliath was 6 cubits and a span. Now, when you look at that measurement, he's basically 9'9". So when you look at 99, which relates to the Ark of the Covenant, because 45 inches plus 27 inches plus 27 inches, which is the size of the Ark of the Covenant, equals 99. Now, 99 equals cognitive knowing, which is knowledge, which is wisdom, which is enlightenment. So the giant is also the higher than average intellect, the higher than average awareness. So that is what symbolically they are telling us in the David and the Goliath story and other stories of giants around the world.
Do you think they were different beings altogether? They were not human, but perhaps
we
extra
found,
or intraterrestrial.
Sure, we found skeletons of them. So, which actually they've been hidden, so we actually don't know the whole truth. But that's another conspiracy in itself. But do you believe that they're exactly what Chris said?
Do you believe they're of a different species? Obviously, being giants, they're not humans, but they're reflected in the Bible as perhaps being the fallen angels or the Nephilim.
Nephilim means Nephal, which means to fall short, which means to sin, which means to lack knowledge. So again, that goes in consistency with what a giant means. Now, when you look at the word watcher, it comes from the same root word as bishop, which basically a watcher is someone who is aware, someone who is awake. So everything that you say, and it all comes back to the same thing, which is knowledge, which is enlightenment. Now, true enlightenment is not only improving yourself, but it is also influencing and helping other people to improve themselves. So that is what true enlightenment is. But everything comes back to that same subject, enlightenment and wisdom. When you ask me the likes of Loch Ness and the likes of Bigfoot and different things, I believe these things are interdimensional travellers. Now, when you look at the likes of Loch Ness, which is there sometimes and which isn't sometimes, when you look at the Maori people that talk about Te Hanawan, which is the guardian of the river, it looks exactly like Loch Ness. These are interdimensional travellers, the same as Bigfoot, the same as all of these different things that sometimes are in our realm, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we can see them, sometimes we'd walk straight past them and not even know they were there. And there's been so many different races, interdimensional races that come into this realm. You know, they can literally, even magicians can make things disappear, just hide it in a different realm and bring it back into view. So a lot of these travellers, whether UFOs, whether travelling in spirit, they are able to come in and out of different realities, in and out of different dimensions. So sometimes we can see them and sometimes we can't.
Why do you think they do that? Why do you think they exist, say, in a fourth or 10th dimension, like string theory might have you believe? What is there a lesson in that? Are they teaching us something that reality, the fabric of reality, is not what it seems?
A lot of them. When you look at the structure of the universe, it is either a neutral, a positive, or a negative. So everything within the universe must be one of those three things, one of those trinities. So you're either neutral, where you have no opinion either way, you're just there to observe and just do nothing. You can be negative, which is what we can see with certainly a lot of the controllers of the world, or you can be positive and you can be trying to help against, to oppose the negative and bring some balance. The way in which things are created is dimensional. Now, dimensional really is simply the amount of sides, the amount of shapes you need to specify a particular point. But when you start looking at the third dimension and the fourth dimension, that they are 90 degrees apart. When you look at some of the maneuvers that UFOs are doing, which is at 90-degree angles, when you look at a geometric universe, because the stars are connected by light lines, as places on Earth are by ley lines, we just can't see them. But these lines that connect the stars are really a geometric grid. Now, if you wish to go from dimension to dimension or reality to reality, you do that at 90-degree angles. And that is what UFOs are doing in their 90-degree maneuvers. When you look at a cross inside a circle, when you look at the Knights of Malta and their cross within the circle, it is at 90-degree angles. When you see something in your peripheral vision, it is a 90-degree angle. When you look at Masonic 33-degree Masonry, the rising ritual, the candidate rises at 90 degrees. So we have a dimensional universe now. For argument's sake, me now as a three-dimensional being, if I was to go to a two-dimensional flatland where everything in existence on that two-dimensional flatland is two-dimensional, they only understand forwards and backwards, side to side. They're two-dimensional. So me, if I was to approach them from an angle or dimension that they don't understand, which is the third dimension, then they wouldn't be able to see me. They would just be able to hear me. And that is why a lot of people turn around and say, I heard, including me, I just heard someone call my name. I just heard a voice. Yes, because there's somebody speaking to you from a dimension that you don't see, and you are hearing them.
Almost like a hologram. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, talking of holograms, when you look at human bodily movements, which is the language of waveforms. Now, those waveforms equate to Fourier mathematics. Now, Fourier mathematics is the same mathematics that was used to create an hologram. So human bodily movements is the same maths that was used to create a hologram.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Now, you mentioned it, the Great Pyramid dating back, of course, before our civilizations as we know it in our history that we teach. What do you think that existed then? Like, what were the people like? Were they humans like us, do you think? Or do you think they were something else, like an alien or a gray? Who was created?
Well, there were humans around because there's artifacts that are dated around the same. Paintings on rocks that were dated around about the same sort of 73,000 years of age. Mm-hmm. So there were humans then, but there also, as I say, I don't believe any civilization has built these monuments. I believe the creator of the universe has built them. But I believe that certain people were entrusted with how to use them and use them to their full capacity. Now, those people may not have been human because it was a direct contact, a direct trust between them and the creator, because they were exchanging information that only they knew. So I do think that the people, the masters of sound, etc., were taught how to use these things. And there's someone pointed out some about the elongated skulls. Elongated skulls have been found in Malta, in Peru, at Stonehenge, in Egypt, in Russia. When you introduce certain sound frequencies into a child in the mother's womb, it elongates the skull. It transmutes DNA and elongates their skull. So it is a sound technique that was creating elongated skulls around the world. And when you look at where they were found, they were all found at harmonic monuments.
That is so interesting.
So important to the very fabric of reality. Again, that is so crucial. The same gentleman, Christian, asks, how do you separate voice to skull, knowing the difference between interdimensionals?
You see, the voice is the word, because when we speak, it is an ordered sequence of letters. Now, letters, again, are often twofold, threefold, or fourfold magic formulas. If I were to say Ra in the correct frequency, then I am basically saying the 10 emanations of the Sephiroth all in one go. Mm. When I say Yahweh, we put vowels into these names so that we could pronounce them. But Yahweh is a tetragrammation, YHWH, which is a magic formula. It is a fourfold key magic formula, the same as a Latin version of that, which is Jehovah. When I look at Amun in Egypt, when you look at the grand architect of Freemasonry, it is AMVN, which is Amun. It is the same character. When I look at Enki and Enlil of the Anunnaki story, they're talking about the four elements. When we speak, the tongue has no bones, but it can destroy. When we speak, if we speak in the correct tone, in the correct frequency, using letters in the correct sequence, we can manifest. It is the word becomes flesh. That's what it means. What we speak, what we think becomes our reality. Now, when you master the air element of the four elements within, which is your thoughts, then you sort of think before you speak. You weigh things up before you make an announcement. So with the voice, you can bring through the most highest of knowledge into the world, or you can sever someone, you can destroy them with your voice. How do you separate? By controlling, by mastering the self. Why does Buddha have a lotus flower on top of his head of 1,000 petals? Mm-hmm. Because in sacred science, the number 1,000 means the conqueror, means the self-masterer. So it tells you that this character has mastered themselves, which includes thought. Now, when you start thinking about things and understanding about things and how things work, then you are able to separate things. And that is how you separate different things. Interdimensional is the ability to obviously go in between different dimensions. And I've experienced parallel existence. I've experienced going into different parallels. I've experienced seeing other things do the same. So we exist in something that's very fluid, where in any given moment we can nip in and out of a different parallel, in and out of a different dimension. And we can do that. I've had things, as I say at the beginning, I've had things come from the past into my timeline now, into my time event now. I have consciously gone back into somebody else's timeline, to somebody else's time event. So what we believe to be one sphere of existence, one possibility, that is it, is wrong, it is mistaken. And when we master ourselves, when we understand reality, when we become the biblical Elohim, which is to appreciate and understand and realize that there's things in the unseen, then we are able to separate the different realities, separate the different aspects of self.
A little bit also like with the cities and the mantras that they would use, and also like shamanic tribes that use vocalizations to enhance what Dean Radin called supernormal in his book Supernormal, about having kind of like superpowers and it's a remote view and telepathy, and these things being a cultural given. They weren't they don't seem foreign in any way or even
it's
special.
like their everyday life.
It's just it's a given.
Same
that they
thing
have
with Buddhists. Yeah, they got it going on. They know.
It is because no one's ever sort of tried to knock it out of them like they do in the West and through our children and just tell them that there's this physical existence. You are born, you pay your taxes, you die, and that is it. But that is completely wrong. And when we look at the East, when we look at the Orient, the Oriental, well, that's because we are orienteering ourselves to enlightenment, which is where the sun rises in the East. So when you start looking at these Eastern cultures in the Orient, they're basically aligning us to the truth. So no one's ever told them that this is not right. When you look at the Hindus, when they give you the chant of Om, well, Om has a wavelength of 7.23 centimeters, which is the exact same distance between the human chakras. So there's also a science to this hum, to this chanting. And if you chant again in the correct way, in the correct sequence, with the correct harmonics, then you are able to evoke, you are able to change reality, you are able to change your reality, and you are able to transcend between realities, which is exactly what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And some of these people are talking about, we talk about shamanic cultures and stuff, they're able to affect the weather, call lightning down upon enemies and things of that nature. This is fascinating.
Manifest it, yeah.
And they manifest it, yeah.
Well, they're able to change the Earth's resonant frequency by their mind. There is Western scientists that have been to the likes of the Philippines, and they did a documented experiment in the Philippines, and there was a surgeon there, or there is a surgeon there, who they observed, and before he did surgery, he actually made the incisions with the power of his mind. He used no tools, he used no scalpels. He was able to open his patients up with his mind. When we look at the phenomena like stigmata is psychokinesis, where the brain, the mind, is so powerful that it can actually create physical marks on the body.
Yeah,
our mind is something that we do not understand. The power of the mind we do not understand. And there's a lot of things, a lot of these lower astral entities that are plaguing us, that are feeding from us, are the creation of the wayward thoughts of man. When we look at the biblical chariots, the likes of the chariots of Egypt that are speeding around and chasing Moses, and the chariot is symbolic of the wayward thoughts, uncontrolled. And we need to control the air, the thoughts, the teote, the tough, the thoughts of what we say, what we think, and what we do, because everything has an impact, everything has an effect. And until we realize that, then we really are just putting all of these manifestations out there and just walking away, not even realizing what we're doing, because we are immature.
I guess the science behind that would probably be something happening in the quantum universe, the microcosm, and at a
string
quantum level.
Theory and mechanics.
Well, I mean, the quantum. See, we science. The science is really observation, and they observe, and then they come up with mathematical formulas. They come up with theories based on the observation. If something, in Newtonian physics, which is the laws of probable outcomes, then if something behaves differently to what it should, then it tells you that there's maybe something present that you can't see. But the first thing that man ever observed was the stars. So really, astronomy and astrology is the original science. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get the likes of the prophets, they were really star readers. They were able to read the celestial narrative. So they were able to predict with a certain degree of certainty what will happen at certain times of the year, or the great year, or the precession of the equinox, because they were able to read the stars, the celestial narrative. So once you understand these things, then you start to understand how things work. And science is well involved in that. When I've looked into quantum physics, when I get a lot of quantum equations just popped into my head. And I've been allowed to see spheres of advanced technology where the sphere is see-through, and there is some kind of advanced technology inside of that sphere, and I've been allowed to see that. I've been given many, many quantum equations, quantum quantum equations that go into angular velocity and different, what I think to be is building up to be some kind of space travel, mathematics and physical equation. Science really, really goes into a lot of things. It could be Akashic records, it can be the quantum field, it can be quantum data, but nevertheless, things are recorded. Some people call it the astral tablets, but nevertheless, everything is recorded. Everything that is said, everything that is thought, everything that is done is recorded, and people have access to that. So, a lot of memories, sometimes science will tell you that your memories are cellular, and yet when I was a child and those memories were made, childhood memories were made, then my cells now are completely different to the cells that I had when I was a child. Mm-hmm. So therefore, my memories are not cellular. My memories are external. My memories are retrievable. My memories are retrievable from the astral tablets where anybody can see them. And
yeah, there's almost a psychic link to it. I follow what you're saying. You're saying your body's cells, repopulate themselves. The cells die, new cells come along. You're not the same physical person, same physical matter that you were when you were a child. It evolves, and like your skin replaces itself every 7 years or something like that. Maybe it's less. I'm not sure, but I get the gist of what you're saying. So we must have some sort of psychic link to those memories for them to exist in our minds the way that they do.
We can, and of course, there are psychics that can give you readings that are able to access that information. When you look at, let's say, astral light, which is really a reverse reflection, just as when we look into a mirror, it is a reversed reflection. It is a dualistic reflection. But astral light is the same. And if you are taught or you are trained or you are an initiate and you're told how to understand these things, then you are able to separate truth from falseness. When you are uninitiated, then the astral light can be misleading. It can be an hallucination. But you have certain people who are taught or who have the ability to read these astral tablets, and they are able to see what has happened or have access to what has happened, just like looking through a book, and seeing someone's life story, really. So sometimes a lot of past life would be having access to these tablets, to this fingerprint of information.
Where everything is recorded. And that's so fascinating. You touched on the original cultures looking at the constellations and having the time, really, right, before all the social conditioning that we grow up with now, to do that. And like the original God was like a sun god and the moon god, and the way those stars were aligned in the constellations. And you see the same constellations between different cultures who probably couldn't have even known each other, like the Scorpion and Gobekli Tepe and that sort of thing.
Big thing is Gobekli Tepe.
Carved right there on those stones. It's just so fascinating. Now, in today's culture, everything gets recorded by Google and Amazon, and they've become the new gods in a way.
It is, but nevertheless, it's still recorded, and it's just a different modern way of recording it. Mm-hmm. It's gone more sort of wires and cables, whereas in the past it was crystalline monuments and that were recording these things. But nevertheless, it's still, everything is recorded, everything is somewhere. It is retrievable somewhere, and that is everything.
Tablets. We have server farms. So there is a correlation there, right? So people would record things in stone so that they knew it would last and be available for cultures that would come later. And now things all live in data and ones and zeros, and
Well, and that is exactly what the likes of the Great Pyramid, all of these codes are written in there. And when you look at ones and zeros, that is binary code. That takes you into duality, that takes you into gravity, that takes you into atoms and subatomic particles. That is binary code. And, the Bible is a binary choice. Do I turn left or right? Do I choose good over evil? Well, that is binary code. That is 0 or 1. Now, when I drop something on the floor, then that gravity is a negative force. If I pick that object up, it becomes a 1, a positive force. Where the two meet is 0 point, which is free energy. And then you go into Nikola Tesla and different other aspects of science. But binary code, there are 2 binary numbers, but every number has a binary code. And I have seen clouds turn into numbers. So our reality is not what we believe it to be. Our reality is computer software that we believe to be real.
Are you talking about like a simulation theory?
It could well be a simulation, but it's almost like a computer software, really, where if you imagine that if I was to put a coded disk into this computer now, it reads the numbers on that disk, but it takes those numbers and it forms a picture, an image that I can recognize in my familiar world. And that is exactly what we are doing, because the way in which we see things, we never see an outside world. We don't even know if one exists, because our 5 senses, our 5 wounds of Christ, take the universal wave and it passes that information to the brain, which then creates a familiar world, largely by memory. I only ever see one probable outcome. I can see a tree, but I don't see the interference patterns that are colliding to create that shape. I can't see that. I can only see one probable outcome of superposition. So all of these different things are mathematical codes that are being translated into what I believe to be my reality, which is not necessarily a true reflection of what is reality.
Right, it gets tough to define when you talk about that superposition in quantum, and where is the electron, right? How are we manifesting here?
What do you think about like ayahuasca and DMT, which has gone back for thousands and thousands of years as well? Sure. Shamans say it's like a pathway to your higher self.
Everything is. We all have a pathway to our higher self. The whole Christ story is talking about the death of the lower nature to be replaced by the higher self, which eradicates sin, because sin is a lack of knowledge. We are given. We have all the tools that we possibly need to elevate, to transform, to go from the captivity to the promised land, the holy land, which is the mind, the enlightened mind. Now, what we see in the likes of the Palestinians and the Israeli is really a biblical myth that has been used as an excuse for a physical conflict. But in reality, what it is saying is, in order for the Jews, which is really not a race, Jew is someone who is able to meditate, to go inward. Mm-hmm. Now, in order to go inward and meditate and to create this higher mind, you have to drive out the lower mind, which in the physical conflict is the Palestinians. So the whole of Israel, which is the higher spiritual mind, and the Jews and the Palestinians is talking about driving out the lower self in order for the higher self to come in and exist in the higher spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. We all have these different tools within us to be able to do that, but you have to realize that you can do that, and you have to realize what you are. You have to realize what your reality is. You have to realize that your condition is not where you can be. It is not where you can end up. It is where we are now, but by certain things that the ancients have done, and what the modern day shamans and whatever are telling you to do based on what their ancients did, because this kind of information was passed along the generations. Then when you start to do these kind of things, then you start to elevate yourself and you start to become the God-man, the God-woman, which connects to the God-self, which then becomes the Godhead, which is divinity.
Excellent. I was just going to use that word, Godhead. Thank you.
Yeah.
You beat me to it.
We have a couple of questions out there as well.
Yeah, a couple of questions out there. Let's see.
Real quick, Chantel.
And Robert Riggy, I have here in front of me. You believe in past lives? Do you believe in past life regression?
I do believe that we get more than one chance to get it. I do believe that we get more. When you look at the mystery school teachings, the Gnostic teachings, etc., they tell you that during the path of initiation, then next time round, you continue where you left off. So that would seem to suggest that to get enlightenment, to get this, it may take several attempts. Several goals at the same thing. So that suggests that yes, there is a past life. But I do also believe that not every regression is necessarily a past life regression. It could be access to the astral tablets that I was speaking about 10 minutes ago, where you connect to the information that is readily available when you know how to connect to it. So yes, I do believe in past life. I do believe that we get multiple chances at getting this, at basically transmuting ourselves. But I do also think that some of these regressions are connecting to the quantum field, the Akashic records, the astral tablets, and having access to that information.
Okay, and Christian Kenneth had mentioned this and just brings this up again. Do you know the synchronicity of the 777 and there's a connection to completion?
The universe being a mathematical universe is really a language. So I always say if I was to get into a plane now and land in China or Japan, then I would expect to be spoken to in Chinese or Japanese. So when I'm in a universe that is mathematical, that is numbers, then there's no strange occurrence when you get spoken to in numbers. Lots and lots of people are reporting seeing sequence of numbers, 777 being one of them. There's multiple meanings, but when you get 2 or 3 or 4 numbers of the same, it is basically amplifying the power of those numbers. So 777 in Egypt is the number of Isis, which again is the pituitary gland, which is the motherhood. In the spiritual science, it is the number of the cross. Now, the cross is the cubical city that we come into as humans with the 5 wounds of Christ, which is, when you have the Vitruvian man and you see the arms outstretched and the body straight, that is the cubical city, which is the cross that we come into in this realm. So in the sort of spiritual science, 777 relates to the cross, to heaven, to the higher chakras, but in Egypt it related to Isis, the goddess of motherhood. We have lots and lots of different numbers. Some people see 111, which is Christ as the Godhead. Christ is the elevated higher self within. You have 222, which again talks about the Christ man, because the numerical value of Christ is 37. The numerical value of man is 6. 37 times 6 is 222. So when you see 222, it is talking about the Christ man or the Christ woman. It is the enlightenment within. 333, the same. 444, 555 talks about a revelation of sacred knowledge. When you start getting to the number 1,000, it's the conqueror, it is the self-mastery. So all of these numbers are really a communication. As I say, I get lots and lots of quantum equations in my head. I get lots of things in dream state where I will see a mathematical number and it is for me to work out the meaning. The last one took me a complete day to work it out because all I was shown in the dream state was a square root symbol and the number 937. Now, when I'd worked it out, it goes all the way back to Egypt, to the bee, to the hexagram. It basically goes into Egyptian knowledge, the knowledge of the mystery schools. So you are spoken to in numerics, in mathematics, which is the language of the universe, and 777 means those two things.
Fascinating.
I love the fact that you get them in your head. And then you go and figure them out. That's
I think they're almost given to you in the
yeah.
dream state. the mind trying to bring itself to divinity. Christian also mentioned QR codes and being shown in ancient sculptures. So the creator of the QR code, are they using history? Do you have any comment on QR codes?
Yeah, the QR codes and modern day logos and brand names are all using ancient symbols, ancient geometry. So when we see an automobile, when we see all the different logos, when people are walking by in brand names on their clothing, this is all ancient symbology, and it means it has a deep meaning. It has a deep symbolic meaning to them, but most people will just walk by and never understand or never just think it's a pretty logo, a pretty pattern. It's not.
Right.
Are no different, and it is all to do with sacred knowledge, symbols. When we look at the likes of the Illuminati that a lot of people refer to, and you see the one eye, and you see lots and lots of celebrities and actors covering one eye, and
sure,
and they do the symbol.
They do the symbol. Now, of course, yes, people say it's the Eye of Horus, the Eye of Ra, the moon, the sun, which yes, the moon is the lower mind, the sun is the higher mind. When both unite, he becomes the bride of Christ. But when we use two eyes, the two eyes give us distance and direction, which is the whole truth, because the light sees, or the eyes see through light. Now, light is seen as truth. So when we have the two eyes that give us direction and distance, we get the truth. Now, when you cover one eye, you're getting half-truth. Now, half-truth is truth mixed with falsity, which is the whole way in which these sacred symbols are hidden from us. So when we're seeing these celebrities doing this with our eye, it goes a little bit deeper than the Eye of Horus, which incidentally represents the five senses as well as the pineal gland. But it's telling us that we are not getting the full truth. We are only getting half-truth. And that is a deeper symbolic meaning to the eye covering.
Wow. That's interesting in
That's very
itself right
fascinating.
there.
So do you think the symbology is used by big business in the world, in the industry, intentionally in the way that it actually means? Or is it being used just to, be eye-catching, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument for both. I mean, my opinion is you must have some level of understanding of what these things mean, because when you are coming up with symbols that mean something very, very significant in the ancient past, that are sacred knowledge, and you've taken that and you've created a logo, you must have some kind of knowledge, not necessarily the same depth of knowledge that it originated with, but you must have a little bit of understanding of what you're doing. Because, when I look at, should we just say, the griffin, well, the griffin in alchemy is mercury and sulfur. When I look at the Nisan badge, well, that is the Paschal moon, that is the Passover. Nisan means April. So that is the Passover, which is the Last Supper. Mm-hmm. So, these things are significant ancient symbols of deep and secret knowledge. And I find it hard to believe that they have no knowledge at all about what they're doing.
Right, right. I mean, they're expert in it, right? These are the goals. In a way, like I was saying, they're kind of like the new gods where they record everything. And I swear our phones listen to us. Kristen and I have this conversation all the time.
I've been saying this for a year because it's like, no. And I'm like, no, really, they are. And
it just seems like even if we talk around our phones, it turns up in my news feed without even searching for anything anymore. And it being a matter of like metadata are being shared.
Oh, like for the past 8 months, I've been taking my phone and going, I don't want to see this commercial. I want makeup, we'll say. And sure as heckin', 1 to 2 days later, makeup comes on. I don't search for it. Yeah. I don't do anything. They are listening.
That they are. And when you get the likes of Alexa, which is an Amazon thing, they are recording what you say.
Yeah, I unplugged that thing 2 years ago. So this is just the phone and the TV.
Yeah, no,
that I'm talking about.
Yeah. And our telecom companies and things of that nature. I had a phone call with our friend Michelle actually last week, and literally the same day, a product she was talking about, which is kind of an obscure product, started showing up in my social media feeds.
Yeah.
I just like, how is that even possible?
I'm like, see, I told you.
Yeah. If he's listening, I mean, I've I mean, this is not just a general smart grid that everything listens to, but I've had government agencies remove my emails, copy them, and put them back. I've had government agencies tap my phone, and when I've said certain words, you can start to hear it record. So people are interested in what you are saying. We live in a surveillance world where everything that you do, everything that you say, even in the future, everything you think, they will know about. And it all comes to this, everything's smart now. Smartphones, smart grids, smart cars, smart meters. It's all smart because it is recording and monitoring.
Smart asses.
Yeah.
For recording us all.
But yeah, it's sort of like a reflection of life and what's going on there behind the scenes, where everything is recorded. Everything that can and will happen is already recorded somewhere in a certain way, which makes one think about free will versus determinism.
Yeah.
Do you think we really have free will?
I mean, that argument is one of the greatest arguments of psychology, but I think that the universe is largely absolute determinism, because everything is a cycle. Everything will happen as it's set in motion to happen. You can guarantee that we'll get the 4 seasons, there'll be a birth and there'll be a death. All of these things, we are young, we become old, become young again. Everything is determined with cycles. Within that determinism, I do think we have a very, very limited free will. If I choose to vote Democrat or Republican, then that is a very, very small element of free will, but nevertheless, those 2 candidates have already been chosen. And that is the same in reality, that is the same in life, in a universe where things are already set in motion to happen regardless of whether you agree, whether you don't want to do it. I guarantee that the age of Aquarius is on its way, regardless if I say stop, it's coming, because that celestially, that it's been set in motion. So my free will is very, very limited compared to the universal determinism.
I agree with you. I've thought about this extensively, and I totally agree with you. It's certain, like, these patterns, these things are in motion. It's memento mori. Remember, you will die. That's the only thing that's really certain to our reality as it exists now, is that we will eventually die, and we're going to make some choices. We're going to do some things in between, but essentially, the world is coded in a way that a big picture is always going to happen the way it's been planned.
It is. I mean, what I would always say is, based on that fact, you have to try and make the best life for you that you possibly can within your perimeters. When we come into this information, when we speak in these terms, we are really the snake men, the snake women of Lemuria, because Mu is the Egyptian symbol of water, which was a symbol of the serpent. Now, when we talk about snake men and Lemuria, we are talking about those who within them the snake has risen, the serpent has risen, which is the Kundalini of serpent fire. We are talking about the adepts, the Hierophants, the Gnostic, who have gone through some kind of metamorphosis, as does a snake with the shedding of its skin. So the whole idea of snake people walking on Lemuria were the adepts who'd gone through some kind of metamorphosis of knowledge. When we look at Atlantis is the pineal gland. It is a consciousness state. Because when you have the spine, which is the jet pillar of Osiris, the 33 degrees of masonry, Jacob's pillar of the Bible, so on and so on, we have 33 vertebrae. Now, the amount of words in the King James Version of the Bible, when you add the different numbers, 788 280, you get 33. So 33 is significant. The Roswell crash was deliberate because it happened on the 33rd parallel, so on and so on. When you get to the 33rd vertebrae of the spine, Jacob's ladder, the 33rd vertebrae is called Atlas. Now, Atlantis is the island of Atlas. So when you see in Greek mythology, Atlas holding up the world, is whirl, which is a vortex, which is the chakras. So really, it is symbolic of the 33rd vertebrae holding up the Golgotha, the place of skulls, the place of enlightenment. So Atlantis is your pineal gland, it is your enlightened state. So we are talking again about these mythical places that are mythology, but the mythology is hiding deeper secret.
So, do you think Lemuria was a mythical place?
Yes, including Atlantis. When I say mythical, I mean as in a metaphor, as in a symbolic place. So, there's lots of islands that have sunk. We can see them on Google Earth. There's all of these things that have sunk. But in terms of what it means to be Lemurian or Atlantean, is basically an enlightened state.
Now, what did you say about Easter Island with the Moai?
Ironically, the statues of Easter Island are 33 feet high. So again, we go into 33.
Oh, wow.
They face east because that is the place of enlightenment. When you look at the statue underneath the ground, they are pointing at the belly of the navel, which again, the entrance of the Great Pyramid is the navel on the north face. They are pointing there because this is telling us that they've, should we say, ascended from the lower regions of self. Now, when you look at some of the statues of Goblet Teke, they're also touching their belly buttons, their navels, their bellies, with the same meaning. So it's telling us that they have advanced themselves beyond their lower nature. Now, when you look at, in Greek, it would be the Herma, which is like a statue with just a head and no body. When you look at the heads of Easter Island, their body is buried and their head is above ground. Now, you can bring John the Baptist into that because when you remove the head from the body, then you are basically separating the higher self from the lower self, which is what it means metaphorically. Now, the heads of Easter Island are telling us to concentrate on a divine mind, not on a body of five senses, because it's the body of five senses that keeps us in this prison. Now, when I mentioned previously about the eye of Horus, where people say it means the pineal gland, it does, but it also represents the five senses. And when you look at the eye of Horus, the different parts of the eye represent a different sense. Now, the pupil is sight, part of the eye that's closest to the nose is smell, the part of the eye that's closest to the ear is hearing, etc., etc. It is the five senses. But you escape the five senses through going through the infinite expanse, which is the eye. Which is the eye.
The Rapa Nui, who were on that island that for thousands and thousands of years, they had said that they came from Venus, and the Venusians came down and told them that in this body, in our human body, that would only last 2 months up there in Venus, and then they would come back every 2 months, but the Venusians could stay up there and live up there. So with this being said, do you think that that's what the Moai stand for, the statues? Venus as well?
There's always been a correlation between star people and Earth civilizations. Mm-hmm. When I mentioned the Sidonian city earlier, and the face on Mars is an exact replica of the Sphinx of Egypt. Now, when you look at the longitude and latitude coordinates of various monuments on Earth and on Mars, they give each other's location. So if you imagine like a mathematical satellite navigation, and you type in a zip number or something on your sat nav and you get to your friend's house. In the face on Mars, for example, in its longitude and latitude coordinates, in its mathematics, it tells you how to precisely find Stonehenge. It tells you how to find the Giza Plateau. Stonehenge tells you how to find the face on Mars. The Giza Plateau tells you how to find Sidonian City on Mars. When you get a map of Avebury in Wiltshire in the UK, the area of Stonehenge, and you put it over the Sidonian City, it is an exact match. There was correlation between these civilizations. Now, going back to what I said probably an hour or so ago in magic formulas, these magic formulas are also evoking beings by using different colours. So when you look at the flag of Islam, which is green, green evokes Phoenicians. Now, the heads of Easter Island are also what is known as negative green, which is a crystalline transmitter.
Yes.
Green, Venus, etc. It's all connected. So different colours evoke different deities from different places.
Oh, it's really fascinating.
And when
Very
you say,
interesting.
deities from different places, are you referring to things like the alien races, like Pleiadians and Nords? Or do you delve into that?
Reptilians.
Yeah, they all exist. I have a lot of, should we say, a lot of Palladian activity around me. I've looked into mirrors, which are portals, and I've seen Palladian beings looking back at me through mirrors, and in an instant, they're standing next to me.
Oh, wow.
So mirrors are also portals, and they are the reverse reflection of astral light. So there's a lot of Palladian activity around me. So Palladians exist, Syrians exist, reptilians exist, etc., etc., etc. There are multiple races that are within touching distance of ourselves. When I look at a distant star, well, that's really just an image on the surface of my retina. It's not that far at all. It's right here. So they are all within touching distance, and there's a lot of activity on Earth and always has been. And I would say because human DNA was programmed in the cosmos, it's not from Earth. The human body was created by an exploding star on Orion. That is why we have the carbon and the oxygen that has created the body. So the body is from Orion, and our DNA is programmed from somewhere else in the universe, and we just happen to be here. We are not from Earth, and I would suggest that some of these races were here before we were.
Absolutely.
What do you suppose their role is with humanity? What do they want with us?
Well, there's multiple roles. There's multiple agendas going on. There's hybridization going on. There's assisting humanity. There's keeping humanity down. There's different things. You see, when you see the likes of UFOs, it's advanced technology, but the pilots are not advanced enough spiritually to not need physical craft. So they are technologically, a lot of them are technologically more advanced than we are, but they're still not completely spiritually advanced. They're the ones who are keeping humanity down. They're also the ones who are trying to help humanity and bring us up. So you have many arguments, sometimes leading into conflict over what is happening on Earth, what is happening to humanity, or what will happen to humanity, because we've been hijacked. Our path has been hijacked. And the original grid that was intended, someone has come along and put their grid on top of it and hijacked us.
That's what.
You
know which species, or is there a couple of them? And what do you mean by hijack? They just don't want us to progress and to our higher selves.
Basically, when you have a higher deity, a higher existence, they come through. They are evoked through light, brighter colours, through light. When you have lower deities, they come through with lower frequency, with darker colours, and they can exist. The lower entities can exist happily in a lower vibration. Mm-hmm. So, in order to exist in this realm, they need to create the environment in which to exist, which is a low vibrational existence, a low vibrational reality, which is what we have on planet Earth. So by putting their grid over us, I meant that they are creating the conditions that they can exist in our reality. Because if we were, we are completely bombarded with negativity, with stress, with fight or flight. That has now become the human condition, and that is basically a lower level negative energy. They can happily exist in that, but they have to create that environment. If I was to get a fish out of a pond and put it into a tank, then I'd have to fill the tank with water. Otherwise, the fish couldn't exist. So they are creating the environments in which they can happily exist, which is one of negativity and low vibration, which is what we have on planet Earth. That is how they are.
Perhaps replication as well, right? I mean, we certainly see the abduction phenomena and the pregnancies that go missing.
Yes.
The fetuses that go missing.
Within 3 to 6 months.
This sort of thing.
Christian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, if you look at these genetic experiments that these races are doing, it is not dissimilar to what human scientists are doing. And, some of the things that they are doing, we don't even hear about. The crossbreeding of different species and different, we don't even know what they're up to. So if we can do it, and even our scientists have put words and sentences into human DNA, we've absolutely implanted words into our own DNA. So if we can do these things, why can't they?
Sure. I mean, we have CRISPR technology. We're doing all kinds of...
CRISPR, yes. Christian Eck wanted to know, Christian Eck Kenneth, apparently keeping the pineal gland deliberately blocked from the masses. We've heard this a lot.
It's asking if they are
like cows, yeah.
That they are. If you imagine that they are attacking everything that we need as humans to survive. So they are attacking food, they are attacking water, they are attacking air. Those are three things that we need to exist. So that they're putting chemicals in the air, they're putting chemicals into water. The food that we are eating is not food, it is food-like, it is of zero vibration. Now, as vibrational beings, if we introduce things of zero vibration or low vibration, that is having an effect on the vibration of our vessel. So they are trying their very best to stop us from ever realizing what is going on. Because the moment that we do, they've lost control.
When you say they, do you mean the aliens will say, or do you mean like the government, or both?
It is quite clear that a lot of the hidden hand that is doing this is not from this world. However, they are using, shall we say, people in prominent positions on Earth to carry out some of their, shall we say, agenda. And so it's a mixture of both, but the hidden hand, the true controllers, are not of this world, but they are using minions on Earth to do that.
Yeah, you agree.
With these different races, going back to the alien races, right, and their work on our Earth, do you find that you can have the same race but have good and evil within the same race? Like, are there good reptilians? And that, I think people naturally just say, well, the reptilians are bad and this one over here is good. And that's a good one.
Good.
And that seems a little narrow-minded. And, because when you look at people, there are good people, there are bad people, right?
Which is exactly what I was going to say. I can walk down the street and I can walk into someone who wishes me harm. I can walk down the street and I can bump into somebody who wishes me the best. If we have good and bad in our own race, then it makes sense. It makes logical sense that there's good and bad in every other race. And so yes, there are those who are for us, there are those who are against us, there are those that don't care either way.
How does that tie back to the phenomena of, say, hauntings and poltergeist activity, in your opinion?
When it basically goes back to the belief of past lives. Now, when you pass from this physical existence, and everything does, even the universe itself will at some point expire, because nothing was ever meant to last forever. When this physical body expires, or what we believe to be a physical body, we have animations within us, which some people call soul, whatever. That soul will leave the physical body and it will go to what is a density degree. Now, a density degree is a vibration, a compatible vibration. So if you have developed whilst on Earth and you've raised your spiritual maturity, then you will not be compatible to come to the Earth plane. You will go somewhere else. If you haven't worked on yourself when you've been given this opportunity, then you will be compatible to come back. And that again is carry on where you left off. So we go to this density degree and we go into, should we say, neither here or there. You can go to the lower astral, but there are different levels of the astral realm. And if you are a high vibrating being, you will be in a much higher place within the astral than a lower vibrating being. So where do we go? We go in between. And there's a valid argument that the light at the end of the tunnel is the misleading astral light that, unless you've been taught or trained to decipher it, can be a misleading hallucination. And there is a valid argument that it is this false light that souls are being harvested in to come back and to be trapped in the earth cycle. And that is really the misleading hallucination of the astral light that the uninitiated, the untrained, are not deciphering what is good and what is not.
Do you feel that when we come back as humans? And because some people think that we come back as a cat or a bird, do you feel that we're on the same path, like we're always human to human?
I think once we've reached the human incarnation, then we will continue as such. The humans on Earth, not taking aside extraterrestrial existence and different things, humans on Earth are the highest species. We don't act like it, of course, but
right.
Some people are simply animals in human bodies. They're not developed. They are the lower animalistic nature, and we can see that in their actions. But we have been given the likes of speech. We have been given symbolic thoughts. We have been given the power to think about something that doesn't exist and manifest it. Just looking at when we look at a rainbow in the sky, mm-hmm. we are the only species that can see that rainbow, because animals don't have the conical receptors to be able to see rainbows. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that we have that they don't, because we are the highest species on the planet. So once you've reached that, you're not going back to become an insect or an ant or a spider, because you've progressed from that. Mm-hmm. So you will, you'll either move forward as a human, or you'll keep coming back as a human until you've moved forward. I don't think you're going to go backwards. You're just going to stay where you are, or you're going to go forwards.
It makes sense too that the symbiogy that we've talked about through the show is something that's visible to human perceptions and sensory, right? So if you were a bug, you may not exactly understand those constellations in the sky. You're going to see something else, and maybe that progresses you from that to a cat, which, by the way, we have a couple in the studio going wild. Yeah. So I apologize that he was getting caught in my headset cord. Wanted to make an appearance, I think. But it seems like it's almost like a roadmap. So if you can figure out the path to Godhead through our existence here as humans, maybe that transcends us to the next level.
And it does, and we can only transcend to the next level when we remove the animalistic lower nature. And until we do that, we can't advance to the next levels. So part of this university really is an opportunity to advance yourself and spiritually become more mature in order to advance. And when you get yourself in that position and you become, knowledgeable, or not just knowledge of the wrong things, but validate, knowledge that you can validate, which becomes wisdom, then you are on the path of basically enlightenment. But you can only do that when you get rid, or you remove, the animalistic nature within. And we all have the animalistic nature within. We all have the higher levels within. We have the human condition and the human potential. And sometimes that can be a very, very wide divide. And in some people, it is a stepping stone. But you have to realize those things. You have to understand these things. You have to realize that there's existences beyond ours in order to progress.
Right. There has to be some sort of balance, because we wouldn't continue to populate the planet. We were just completely on a spiritual, ethereal plane mentally.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything really comes down to balance. If you imagine that the universal creator, all one, gives you the word alone. So if you imagine that perfection is balance, and when you balance yourself, that is perfection. Now, if you are one, if you are alone, you can't be perfect, because you can't balance. You have to become two in order to balance. Mm-hmm. So when zero becomes one, that is the creation of duality. When nothing becomes something and something becomes nothing, that is the number 10. And again, going to previously, number 10 is the creation. Number 10 is the whole of the universe. And number 5 is the miniature universe, which is man. The answer to the mystery is within the mystery itself. Understand ourselves, we will understand the universe.
Wow, that's perfectly said. I like that.
I love that. Yeah. Now you have 7 different books out. You can tell us a little bit about the individual books. I know you have the Ancient Code, the Serpent Fire, the Anunnaki of Nibiru, which I believe there were a couple questions in chat we may not have gotten to about the Anunnaki. Can you tell us a little bit about your library of books and what you have coming out?
Yeah, of course. Just quickly, the Anunnaki again is symbolic. The boat inside the Great Pyramid is Nibiru, because Nibiru basically means ferryman. Now, when you look at the river Styx in Charon, where it transported the souls across the river Styx, you look at the gigantic boat in the Great Pyramid, which takes the enlightened souls across the river of the sky, which is the Egyptian duet in the boat. That is Nibiru, that is the ferryman. So the Anunnaki is really, again, a symbolic story of human potential and the human condition. My books cover the kind of things that we've discussed this evening, but in much greater detail, because with a book, you can just go as deep as you wish, and the reader can go as deep as they want, and they can take it at their pace. And if they've had enough that particular evening, you just close the book and you forget about it. So all my books really are, what does the reader need to know? And it takes them in a chronological thing. Some of my earlier books were the earlier journey, which was the experiencing, and some of the later books like Alchemy of the Gods and the Card of Christ takes you into the deep symbolized world and what these characters really mean. Noah, which is really the 7 chakras, which is the enlightenment. Noah built the ark when he was 120. Moses lived to 120. The word Illuminati equates to 120. What is 120? It is the synthesis of the power of the Pentagram. So again, it goes us all the way around into full circle. And 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 is 120. So it is the pentagram within that number. That is why we have these biblical ages, these Illuminati geometrias. So it goes into this kind of information, what is the Last Supper, what is Christ, what is Mary Magdalene, what is the Sphinx of Egypt, what is the identity of Christ, what is the Giza Plateau, what are all these different monuments around the world and beyond the world. And he pieces everything together in a gigantic ancient code, which is a blueprint of the whole of the ancient world.
Fascinating. I believe humans are conditioned naturally from perhaps evolution for pattern recognition, for probably survival reasons, but also to see these patterns that are right there in front of us that we miss all the time. You see it with the 11:11 phenomena. People want to see 11:11 on their clocks, and they do. And then they'll start to notice the brain will pick it up everywhere. Right? Yeah, we do. And again, a lot of the things that we do is by program. A lot of things we do is by condition. A lot of the things that we do is by memory. But when you know how to interpret these things, when you think that the language of the world is English or American English, it's not. It's the word of codes. It's the word of symbols. And when you look at how codes started, how codex started, it was really carving symbols into the barks of trees. Now, when you get the word tree, it is the same family as the word true. When you look at the word druid, it means knower of oak trees, which is all to do with truth. When you look at a tree itself and you look and the roots of the tree are unseen. They represent secret knowledge. Now, when you are a blasphemer, then blaspheme in Hebrew means to uproot. So if you are blaspheming, you are uprooting secret knowledge from the unseen world to the seen world. You are basically exposing secret hidden knowledge. That is what a blasphemer really is. So that is tree, that is druidism, that is all of these different things that all correlate to codes. And that is how the coded world started. So the language of the world is symbols and codes. And if you understand how to read them, the language of the masters purely for the advanced students, then it opens you up to a complete new reality, to a complete new world that you never even knew existed.
It's amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Very impressive. And I love the sound and music that is symbolic in some ways and conjures certain things, because music is so important to people and we take it for granted. But, how many people listen to music and are energized by certain songs? And
Right.
I remember many years ago, and when I was younger, watching a Shirley MacLaine meditation video. And she had broken down keys, the basic keys, and E, F, G, A, B, C. It was like a C scale or G major scale or something, 2 different colors, and there did seem to be some resonance in that. Being a musician at the time, I could almost see those songs in those colors that she mentioned. I believe there is something to it. I always have.
No, there is. When you look at, if you are saying the letter A in G tone, then you create light blue, which is the colour of the sky, and so on and so on. These words are clothed in numbers, but they're also clothed in electromagnetics, which is really colours and vibrations. And each of these different sounds, each of these different chords, speaking about the pentagram is concealed within the chorus of Hallelujah, one of the most famous hymns the world has ever seen.
Wow.
Because it's actually encoded, the pentagram is encoded within the chorus of Hallelujah. Wow. So we have all of this coded information, sound, harmonics, cymatics, where sound creates geometry. All of these different things, are sonic, and we are also sonic creatures. We are sound, and each and every part of our body relates to a different sound, to a different tone. So when you hear music and tones that you like, because that is resonance with your vibration.
And that's exactly what it is. It is a vibration. It's a vibration within your eardrum, right? That tells the brain that's what this sounds like, which is an interesting concept to think about a little bit. Right?
When you look at the key of David, the key of Solomon, when you look at the 64 keys of Enoch, there are harmonic keys. And certain tones, certain frequencies will unlock the gates.
Some comments out there.
Another one by Christian at Kenneth. He wanted to know, what does Michael know about star forts?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Star forts.
Star forts.
Star forts. Well,
I'm not familiar with that myself.
The Egyptian word for star is Esbar, which means gateway, stargate. So we have these gateways, and many of them are guarded. So for anybody who's seen the film 4, you will see that there are certain stargates that have guardians on them, and they do. When you start looking at entities living there, entities traveling from different stars, from different star systems, then in the same way as we had forts and castles and everything on Earth, I'm understanding the word fort to be the same kind of like thing. Just because we can't physically see things and can't physically interact with them, they can interact with each other, and there are many battles and many conflicts going on at the moment in the stars as well and different sort of unseen worlds in our reality as well. So absolutely, there are stars, there are gateways, there are guardians at the gateways that only allow certain things, certain frequency to pass. And again, that is another reason why a lot of the ancients wanted to transmute themselves to a light body using piezoelectric methods, which is to convert magnetic energy into electric light energy to transmute their body into a lighter form to travel through these gateways.
Wow, almost reminds me of the alchemy stone. Transferring a philosopher's stone, transferring gold, lead into gold.
But that just means the lead is the lower aspect, the gold is the higher aspect. That is the philosopher's stone. The stone is the pineal gland. And when you transmute yourself, that is the perfect stone. And that is what, the stone of Arthur, the stone that David struck Goliath with, the foundation stone, the coronation stone that all monarchs are coronated upon, which is Jacob's pillar. The stone all relates to the pineal gland and the smoothing of the pineal gland. And that's what the stone relates to, the philosopher's stone.
Excellent. That is so cool. So we're live streaming from the Global Pyramid Conference, and did you want to talk a little bit about that? Is that still going on now? Is that at this weekend?
Yet it's going on. It was going on Friday. It's been going on today, and it's final day tomorrow. So I'm doing a talk, which 10 o'clock in the morning conference time, which is 5 p.m. my time. And what I'm going to talk about is, again, because it's a pyramid conference, I will be speaking about the pyramid and the aging of the pyramid and what the pyramid really is. But I wanted to expand upon that and bring in other aspects of the ancient world as well into the modern world, because it is all relative to Egypt. When you look at the Bible, that is really just taken from Egyptian hands to Hebrew hands to Christian hands. So it's all relating to the pyramid. So I'll be dealing with that. I'll be dealing with all the different sites that we've spoken about: Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe, Easter Island, the Anunnaki briefly, and a lot of Egyptian knowledge. And I'll also be going and putting my formula up for the speed of reality and how that relates to the sonics within the Great Pyramid that I spoke about earlier. So to be predominantly as an origin, as a foundation, will be about Egypt, but then that will spread out and bring other aspects into Egypt as well.
Now, can people tune in by live stream and see that?
They can, if they go to the globalpyramidconference.com, then all the information is on there. As I say, it's tomorrow is the third and final day, so that they're more than welcome to sign up and join that and just sit the last day and see my talk as well, which is, as I say, 10 a.m. conference time, and hopefully they will enjoy. It'll be an hour and a half of a presentation where I shall go into visuals about what I've been speaking about this evening. Fantastic.
And so globalpyramidconference.com is where people can go, and I actually noticed there's a QR code on there.
Right.
We're all using this stuff. And also, where can people find your books and your products? And best way.
The best way to find me is through the website, which is michael-feeley.com. From there, you can find YouTube channels, Facebook, blogs on there, different things that I'm doing, different events that I'm at. As I say, I recently just filmed a movie, done my own series. There's potentially going to be my own TV show soon coming as well.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, it's basically going to be giving the ancient world a voice in the modern day, because, as I say, now it was really set. It was set in stone to appear now, to come out now, to re-emerge now, to help humanity out of its sort of messy situation. And it was timed so this knowledge would stand the most chance of being heard.
This has been fascinating.
Yeah.
We'll be looking forward to that. I definitely want to check that out. I know Kristen is all over this. She was very excited coming into this. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And I know you're busy. You obviously have a lot going on, and we very much appreciate it. This has been fascinating, and maybe a better word is enlightening.
Yes.
And we appreciate it, Michael.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
It's an absolute pleasure. I love doing these things, so it's always a pleasure to be invited to do it. And thank you to Michelle as well for introducing us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody in chat, Christian and Anne Marie and Robert and everybody else.
And if we don't get to your name, but thank you.
We appreciate you. You guys make it a show. So we appreciate it, and have a great week, everyone. We will see you next Saturday.
Bye-bye.